Kum len la black tomorrow. We are up to Masechta Beitza Daf Gimel Amud Aleph. We're trying to work out why a Beil should know the B'Yom Tov. Bechil said it's Aser. So we had one explanation of Nachman because it's Muktzah. We didn't like it. We didn't like it because then the mother also is Aser. Why are we only stressing that the egg is Aser? So therefore, we're talking about a hen that is set aside for eating. So the animal, the hen itself, is not Aser. It's only the egg. And basically, we have Rabbah on the one side who says it's because of Hachana. That means because Yom Tov and Shabbos are Chashav, and therefore you have to prepare beforehand. And if Shabbos is followed by Yom Tov, that means the egg, which was completely formed the day before on Shabbos. Shabbos was preparing for Yom Tov, and that's Asam HaTorah. The Torah says that you should prepare. Prior to that, only on the weekday can you prepare. What about Yom Tov falls out during the week? So it's a Gezeda. Next time it'll fall out post Shabbos. It's only Shabbos if it falls out post Yom Tov. So therefore it's always Asr. That's the opinion of Rabbah, which means it's Asr Mahatayra. And it comes out according to Rabbah, which is a big machlekes Rishonim, but it comes out according to Rabbah that Yom Tov, you also had to prepare prior to Yom Tov. In other words, the mon did not fall on Yom Tov. The mon actually fell only during the week, not on Yom Tov and on Shabbos. There's a machlekes that the mon fell on Yom Tov or not, because Yom Tov you were allowed to carry. So there's a machlekes whether it fell on Yom Tov or not. Here it seems clearly that it fell on Yom Tov. It did not fall on Yom Tov, and that's why you had to do it at Yom Tov. That's why our minig is we have lechem mishnah on Yom Tov as well on Shabbos. I remember seeing a long time ago a question, and I don't remember seeing the answer, that if Yom Tov falls on a Friday or on a Sunday, then how come we don't have 3 chalas for lechem mishnah? Because if Yom Tov is on a Friday and Yom Tov the month doesn't fall down, then on Thursday you had to get not only the food for Thursday but for Friday and for Shabbos. So maybe then you should have 3 chalas to commemorate that. But, I mean, the simple answer would be because like plug, most Yom Tovim don't fall on Friday, so therefore we just wanted to every year should be the same, or every Yom Tov should be the same. But I remember seeing other answers, I can't remember what they are. Okay, so let's get to, and then we had 2 other answers to the Gemara, which are similar. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yitzchak, basically saying is that this is part of another Gezerah. This is very similar to either fruits that fell on the ground, and they only on Shabbos or on Yom Tov, it's forbidden because you might climb the tree. And this is the same thing. It came out, it emerged on Shabbos or on Yom Tov, and it was all part of the same Gezerah, or because the Gezerah of Schita, that you're not allowed to squeeze grapes, so therefore even juice that oozes out on its own is forbidden. And the same thing over here. This came out on its own, and it is forbidden. So the Gemara and I want to know, why do we need 3 answers here? We rejected a Nachman, but why do we need 3 answers at Rabbah? The Gemara is like this. But 5 lines on the top. How come the other 3 answers don't agree with Nachman? It's obvious. Kikushin, the question we asked, if we're talking about Muktzah, then why don't we also discuss the hen itself? Why only talk about the egg? Why don't they mention the Rabbah because of Hachana Lester? Maybe they don't hold this whole pasuk that it's called Hachana de Rabbah, preparing. Actually, according to Rabbah, which is Isa Daraisa of Hachana, so how come we make an Eid of Tafshilin, let's say Eid of Yom Tov, and then we cook from Friday to Shabbos? If it's an Isa Daraisa, what in the world does Eid of Tafshilin help? So if you remember in Pesach that Mavav, the Rabbahs of the opinion that we say Hoyel. I mean, HaTorah, we say Hoyel Chazal Kloila Urchet. He says that since if guests would come on Friday afternoon, you're permitted to cook for them. So therefore, HaTorah is no longer an Isa cooking Friday in the after for Shabbos, because it could be guests who come Friday afternoon, as long as you finish it in time that guests can eat it on Friday. So Navas, the Rabbanon don't like it, because then you'd be preoccupied with cooking on Friday, you're not going to enjoy your simcha. So because that Isa the Rabbanon, the Eid of Tafshilin allows you, because you're continuing whatever you started before Yom Tov. So that's how Rabbah will for that. Says about it further. So Rabbah Nami, because we don't believe in Achana. El Rabbi Yosef, my time Lamak Rabbi Yitzchak. But Rabbi Yosef, basically is more or less saying the same thing. One of them says it resembles fruits that fell to the ground. The other one says it resembles a juice that oozed out. I mean, the principle is the same. So very similar. Amalach, the reason why I don't like the simile to juice that oozed from a grape, because we're talking about food here, and that's liquid. Beya uchle, beya is food. Upedis uchle, and fruits are food. La fuke mashkin la uchle, but juice is not food; it's a drink, it's a liquid. No, but Rabbi Yitzchak, my time so how come Rabbi Yitzchak doesn't say the reason Rabbi Yitzchak? He's right. It's similar to fruit that fell on the ground, and it's an egg. So both food and it's the same idea. Amlach will tell you, Beya Belua. Mashkin Beluin. On the contrary, the case of the egg was that before it was absorbed, concealed, and then it emerged. The case of the juice, it was absorbed in the grape and then it emerged. Exactly the same principle. La fuke paid is the megalo kind of fruits. Yes, it was also revealed. Just it was attached to a tree and now it's detached to the tree. Totally different principle. Even Rabbi continues, even Rabbi Yechon also holds Gzeira Mashkin Shezov. We're going to try to prove that Rabbi Yechon also agrees with Rabbi Yitzchak that the iser of an egg is very similar to the iser of Mashkin Shezov, with this juice that oozes that on its own. Rabbi Yechon asks a question on Rabbi Yehuda. And he gives an answer from this discussion. We can glean what Rabbi Yechon would hold, how he compares an egg to juice. Now we learned, in one place we learned, Ein Seichetin as a Pedis, you're not allowed to squeeze fruits, Lahoitzim and Mashkin. You're not allowed to squeeze fruits to extract from it liquids. The if it oozes on its own, they are forbidden. Comes along Rabbi Yehuda and says it depends. If it's a fruit like an orange, which is primarily there to be eaten, so of course you're not allowed to squeeze it still, but if it oozes on its own, we're not going to answer it. Because even if you squeeze it, it's not really asa. Why? Because you're not really, it's meant to be eaten. So because it's meant to be eaten, it's not meant to be squeezed. So it's not asa. In malach of dash mafarik, but mirabon you're not allowed to. But if it's oozing on its own, you're not happy because whatever you're losing, whatever oozes out, you're losing from the food. So you're not even happy. Therefore, we're not worried. The im lemashkin, but if it's a grape or an olive, which is meant primarily for its liquids, then also, then you're very happy when it oozes on. So you don't have to bother squeezing it; it's right there, and then therefore it's asa. So Alma, what do we see from here? Kol oichlin Rabbi Yehuda. We see from here. He says that if it's, let's say, food, then the juice that comes out of it is permitted. And he says anything which is made to be eaten, then uchla the ifrasu. Every part of it is considered part of its food. Even the liquid, the juice that oozes out, is considered just food. So it's not part of mashkin shezavut. Right? It's considered food. So let me ask you a question. What it mean? I'll ask you a question. But what Rabbi said also, we're talking about over here that let's say you're not sure Rosh Hashanah. On a normal Yom Tov, you have a sveik of the game. Either the first day is Yom Tov or the second day is Yom Tov. And for example, Eid Tafshil, if you got to make Eid Tafshil, and you can make one on the first day Yom Tov and say a Monshech. If today is Yom Tov, then tomorrow's a weekday. I don't need an Eid Tafshil. And if tomorrow is Yom Tov, well, I just made Eid Tafshil on the weekday because both days aren't Yom Tov. So there's a discussion: how do we treat Rosh Hashanah? 2 days Rosh Hashanah. Let's say you might be 2 days and you didn't give your truma yet. And if the first day you realize you didn't give truma yet, so you cannot eat from all this crop that you have here, all these fruits that you have there, because it's called tevel. So on the first day, what you do is you set aside some of the fruits and you say that this is going to be a truma for what's going to be over here. And because Rabbi Yehuda holds that the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah is no different than any other Yom Tov. It's a sveik of the yom, right? You're not sure which day is what, which day is the weekday, which is the Yom Tov. So this is what you do. So he says here, Rabbi Yehuda says, Masna Odom, you make a tanai, a condition, al kalkola shall pay this in a basket full of fruits, be Yom Tov Rishon on the first day Yom Tov, va'oichle b'sheni, and therefore you may eat it on the second day. So what you do is you set aside your truma and your meiser on the first day Yom Tov. He said this: if today is not Yom Tov, tomorrow is a real Yom Tov. Well, I just gave valid truma meiser. If today was Yom Tov, then my truma meiser is no good today because you can't give truma meiser on Yom Tov. Fine. So today, the first day Yom Tov, you won't eat, but on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, you can eat. You go through the same process all over again, and therefore now you say the same thing. Give truma a second time. You say, well, if yesterday was Yom Tov and I couldn't do it, then today is not Yom Tov. So here's my truma meiser. And if today is really Yom Tov, then yesterday was all right. So either way, you can eat it. And you can eat in the second day Yom Tov, you can eat your true. That's what Yehuda says. You can make it tonight on the first day Yom Tov, and then you repeat the same exercise again the second day, and you can eat in the second day. The first day, obviously, you can, because maybe Taka is Yom Tov, and therefore your truma is not valid. Then he says, if an egg was laid the first day Rosh Hashanah, you can eat the second day because of Manashach. If today is Yom Tov, the second day is Yom Tov, then yesterday was weekday. What's the problem? And if yesterday was Yom Tov, so it's an egg was laid Yom Tov, well, today's a weekday. Then again, it's what's the problem? So when can you eat the egg? Only on the second day. But you cannot eat it on the first day. In other words, what do we see from here? So we see from here that, so Rabbi Yechon's question is, here we see this food, it oozed down on its own. This is the egg. The egg is like oozed down on its own. And yet, it is permitted. So what do we see from here? Sorry, it's forbidden. So Rabbi Yechon is asking a question. You, Rabbi Yehuda, said before, when liquid pours out, it comes out on its own. He said that it's permitted, and here we see by an egg which was laid on Yom Tov. Rabbi Yehuda says it's forbidden. It's the same principle, and yet here's forbidden, here's permitted. So what do we see from Rabbi Yechon's question? That he compared the egg to liquid that came out. In other words, he follows Rabbi Yitzchak that the logic of the egg that was laid on Yom Tov is because it's like juice that oozes out from a fruit. That's the question that we're going to. So that's what we're trying to prove from it. Meanwhile, Rabbi Yechon asks this question: how does he deal with it? Umeshani Rabbi Yechon actually answers Muchlefes Hashit. I have to swap around the names. That in fact Rabbi Yehuda holds that you're not allowed to eat the juice that's squeezed out its own. So Rabbanan said you are allowed to. Rabbi Yehuda holds you're not allowed to, and therefore the din by an egg is very similar to the din by the juice. Just like the juice, if it flows on its own, you're not allowed to. So to the egg, you're not allowed to either. So the Gemara says, and the Gemara concludes it's proof. And since he asked the question from the egg to Mashkin Shazavu Shma Menachat Taimus, was clearly that the reason why an egg is laid on Yom Tov is also because it's no different than the case of the liquid that came out of the fruit. It's the same thing. So the Gemara, so that's what the Gemara says. Rabbi Yechon holds like Rabbi Yitzchak. Says the Gemara, Ravina says, in fact, I will answer Rabbi Yechon's question in a different way. Instead of swapping names around, which is sort of a last resort, not a first resort, have another answer why you can say that there's no comparison between the case of the egg and the case of Mashkin Shazavu. Why? I can say Rabbi Yehuda really holds, that Mashkin Shazavu is permitted on Shabbos because it came on its own. It's really food and therefore it's nothing. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, an egg that was laid on the first day Yom Tov also would be mutter. So how come he only talks about the second day Yom Tov? He's talking to the Rabbanon. According to me, even the first day is mutter. You guys hold the first day it's also because Mashkin Shazavu is also. But at least agree with me that the second day Rosh Hashanah should be permitted because of Manoshach. If yesterday was Yom Tov, today is weekday. If today is Yom Tov, then yesterday was a weekday. So the second day Yom Tov, an egg should be permitted because I hold an egg and Mashkin Shazavu the same thing. And the Rabbanos agree because they say that Rosh Hashanah is different than any of the Yom Tov. Every other Yom Tov it's a Sveika de Yoma. But Rosh Hashanah it's a Yom Aricht because even in the beginning, in Yisrael, in Yerushalayim, like they made a special takana, the Eidim come after Mincha. We're going to make 2 days Yom Tov. So it's not like it's a Sveika de Yoma, it's a Vadai. It's definitely the Rabbanon, therefore it's considered one long day. And that's why for Shechianu, the second night, we need new fruit. Because otherwise you're not entitled to make a Shechianu. It's like one long day. Even though b'diavad you don't have him, you still make shechirah. Ravina says l'olam l'teifach, but Rabbi Yehuda l'divreim the Rabbanan come. He's talking to the Rabban. L'didi, according to me, I hold that filibidisha namashay. I hold an egg is even permitted the first day. The uchla, the ifrazut, because it's food. Just like juice that's squeezed out from not from a grape, from an orange. And if it's considered food and it's not also, same thing there. Egg is considered food and it's permitted. Ella did chud, and you say no, that mashkin shazav was forbidden, and therefore the egg was laid on the first day on Yom Tov is also. But why don't you at least concede to me the b'sheni shaka that is permitted on the second day of Rosh Hashanah? The shtei kedushas, hey, we treat Rosh Hashanah like any other Yom Tov. It's a sveik of the yom. One day is definitely Yom Tov, and one day is definitely a weekday. No, we disagree with you. At least when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, kedusha achasi. It's not, but it's definitely also. It's definitely the second day is midrabanan, so it's like one long day. Says the Gemara further, Ravina will give another answer. Ravina Bereid, Ravulam, different Ravina. He says, I'll tell you how we learn shot by the egg. You want to know if the egg is the same principle as Mashkin Shazavu. So how come he says that the egg is forbidden the first day? Because we're talking about a hen, we're talking about a hen of muktzah. It's not a hen that was meant to be eaten. We're talking about a hen that was meant to raise eggs, and therefore the hen is muktzah. And because the hen is muktzah, the egg is also forbidden. That's why it's awesome. And Rabbi Yehuda, he holds a muktzah, like we originally learned by Shammai. Rabbi Yehuda holds a muktzah, and therefore the egg is forbidden. Says Gemara, okay, Meisvei, I'll ask you a question. Yeah, I'll ask you a question. It says in the Beitza, Echad Beyeshanul the B'Shabbos, whether it's an egg that was laid in Shabbos, Echad Beyeshanul that was laid in Yom Tov, in Metalton, it's muktzah. It says you cannot eat it, you shouldn't even move it. You cannot even move it, let's say, to cover some kind of a, let's say, you have a bottle. You want to use the egg as a bottle stopper. If you hold an egg upright 180-degree vertical, it's very strong, and it can hold up very heavy things as long as you have it not on a tilt, but very straight. But you're not allowed to use it to support the legs of a bed, again, because of muktzah. But what you could do is aval koife aleha esakli. You can take a pot and cover the egg so that nobody should break it. Bishvil shaloi tishav shouldn't break. Even though we had an opinion of Yitzchak, we had in Shabbos who says, "Ein keli nitl el ledover hanitl." You're not allowed to move a keli only for something else that is not muktzah. And here, the egg itself is muktzah. How can you take the keli, a keli, a pot, and cover the egg with it? So the Gemara already asked that question. The Gemara answers, he's talking about a case there. How come over here it says that you're allowed to? So he answers, talking about here a keli that you needed for another purpose. And once you needed a place where the space that was taking up. And once you picked it up in a permitted way, you can put it down wherever you want, including here. Okay, what's the problem here? Why we bring this whole brayse? It's the next line. Usveika asur. If you're not sure, and we'll soon define what fake is. Right now, we think that suffix was it late today? On Yom Tov was late yesterday. So since it's a suffix, we'll be machmer. And that's the question we're going to discuss it. We have a general rule: whenever the suffix in the Torah, we're machmer, but whenever the suffix is abundant, we're makel. So we'll come back to that. The imnis arva be'elef, it got mixed up with 1,000 other eggs. Kula nasuris. They all are awesome. We don't say bottle berev, and most explain why not. Says the Gemara, Rabba konnte Rabba damals machane Rabba. So the whole reason why an egg laid on Yom Tov is forbidden, because he's supposed to prepare it in the weekday, and here was prepared. We're worried that he might be prepared on Shabbos, which is an Isa deraisa. Even though the Eibush prepared it, doesn't matter. Havis fake deraisa. Asafik in the Torah. It's called Hachana de Rabba. The Chofek deraisa, the Chumrim. We're always machmer, so we understand that. And the Beitza Daf, they both say it's part of the Gzeira, either of fruits that fell off the tree or because of a liquid that ooze out. Of oozing liquids, it's only rabbanon. So if it's a suffix, why are we machmir? And we say it's also it should be mutter. Suffix rabbanon lekula. Damn, if you say the suffix rabbanon, it's only suffix rabbanon. Even chosvei rabbanon lekula, which always be mekel. Amalach. So we answer back. Who told you that when it says suffix here, you decided that suffix is whether this egg was laid on Yom Tov or the day before Yom Tov, and therefore you have a problem? No, we're talking about a different case altogether. We're talking about a suffix, whether the egg is kosher or not kosher. You don't know which bird it came from. Sefer us on the suffix treifa. We're talking about this case is not sure if it's a kosher bird, if not a kosher bird, and therefore from a treifa, and therefore is suffix deraisa l'chumra. What's the big deal? What to do with Yom Tov? Says the Gemara, oh, suffix deraisa. What do we know as a general rule when it comes to an Isa treif? The general rule by treif is that it's bottle b'shishim if it's mixed up min mina, or if it's solids, we say bottle b'raiv. So l'chayda, what do you mean it falls into 1,000? The next line says in the Mishnah, if it falls into 1,000 other eggs, they're calling us all also. Why? So aim safer. Look at the very last line. It says this out of elev got mixed up in 1,000 eggs. Kulan asuras. They are all forbidden. Question is why? Why should all forbidden? If you learn the way we initially understood, it's a question of whether it's a weekday or Yom Tov. So here we can understand this egg get mixed up in 1,000 other eggs. Why it's asur? This is known as the famous rule that not everything that is bottled. Bottle means that it's nullified as if it isn't there. So, for example, we say that if it's a davar nikr, if it's something very chashuv, or if it's a davar shebeminyan, something you don't sell, you just throw a whole bunch in a bag, or by the kilo, by the weight, but rather you sell like a dozen eggs, which today that's the only way eggs are sold. So they're counted individually. That makes it very significant. We say then there's no laws of bittul; it doesn't get nullified. Another example is a davar sheyesh matir, something which is forbidden today and permitted tomorrow. So the way it actually learns, the logic behind that is, why employ the rules of bittul today? Wait till tomorrow and you eat it outright. Bittul is like only if we have no breda. We have no choice, so we'll rely on this nullification. It's there, but we'll assume that it's not there. But why assume it's not there when you can wait till tomorrow and there's no Isser anymore, Matzah Yom Tov? That's called the davar sheyesh matir. The way the Ran learns in the Durham, he said the pshat is that there's a whole argument we will have an avodah zarah about min b'minoi. If two same things, do they nullify each other or on contrary reinforce each other? Rabbi Yehuda says that min b'minoi afilu b'elef lebatul. They don't nullify each other. If you have one treif and one kosher exactly the same, it's asa forever. And we say it's batul b'raiv or batul b'shishim. So the Ran explains over there that the principle that we're arguing is because every min b'minoi is not really min b'minoi. Because even though physically the substance is the same, but legally they're not the same because one is kosher, one is treif. So it's like min be'ene minor, and that's why we say it's still bottle. But if it's a davar sheyesh matir and it's the same min, like the eggs. So not only is it physically the same substance, but also halachically, it's almost the same substance. This is mutter today, and the other one's mutter tomorrow. So they're both really technically mutter. You have an external thing that's holding it back today, but not itself is treif. It itself is kosher. Tomorrow you'll be able to eat it. So therefore, it's back to the law of min b'minoi, and in this, the Rabbanan agree such a kind of min b'minoi, where it's exactly the same in every respect. I feel about the bottom. So therefore, we're talking here about an egg. Someone asks, if you tell me we're talking about an egg that was laid on Yom Tov, I understand why 1,000 eggs doesn't nullify it. If you can tell me it's a question of suffix treifa, then explain to me why in 1,000 eggs it doesn't become bottom. The way you want to learn, we're not talking about Yom Tov. You want to learn, we're not talking about Yom Tov. Why? Because you had a problem. If it's talking about Yom Tov, then it's a suffix rabbanon, it should be lenient. So you're telling me we're talking about a suffix treifa, then why is it if it falls into 1,000 eggs, they will conasa? If it's a bottle, it should be bottle. And if you're going to tell me, you can tell me, this is a dover shebeminyan. One of the exceptions of the rule of bittul is if it's a dover shebeminyan, something that you sell by counting. That means each individual is chashuv, it doesn't become bottle. So maybe that's how eggs are. So we have a machlekes. How do we understand dover shebeminyan? Does it mean that the only way you sell it is by counting it? Other than that, it's not really chashuv. Or if occasionally you sell it by counting, that is sufficient to make it chashuv. Or as a third opinion, even sometimes, not even occasionally, sometimes you sell it by number, it becomes chashuv, it doesn't become bottle. So Gemara says, if you learn like the opinion culture, dark is that on occasion you sell it by the counting, occasionally is good. I understand that an egg, sometimes they count. In those days, they sometimes sell egg by the dozen, sometimes they sold it, or whatever, by the number, or sometimes they sold it just in a bag, they put it in, and whatever's there is there, a bag full. So therefore, if you hold that sometimes you sell it by the numbers good enough to make it chashuv, I understand why a suffix treifa in 1,000 eggs is not bottled. Only if it's constantly counted, the only way you sell it by counting, so eggs doesn't qualify. So why isn't it bottled? What are we talking about? What's his argument? We learned somebody had a fenugreek of Klai Keren, and he got mixed up. It got mixed up with grapes. What you should do is you take out, and let's say you have let's say 101 pieces, Klai Keren. So what you do is, so if it got mixed up altogether, then is yudoku. You have to go ahead and burn it, because everything now is aser bahana. Klai Keren, not only if you mix some another seed with grapes, not only is it forbidden to eat, you not even have enough, so you burn it. What about this advu ba'achedes? What about then this little thing here got mixed up with others? The ba'achedes, and this then from that group got mixed up into another group. Kulon yidulku. Then you have to burn the whole lot. Why? Because asabano, you just keep on moving it around. So the Chayda Teiserei discusses, isn't this a case of sfek sveika? So let's say you have one, you have the original got mixed up in a pile of let's say 50 other grapes. And then from the pile, so that's one suffix. You ate one grape. Which grape have you eaten? The one for the Klai Keren, or just from other grapes which are permitted? And then you took, let's say, some of the grapes from that pile fell into a second pile. So now it's a second suffix. First of all, when you ate from the second pile, did you eat from the second pile, or did you eat some of the grapes that fell into the first pile? And even if you ate from the grapes of the first pile, which grape was it? Was it from the original that's aser, or from that's mutter? That's a sfek sveika. So why in the world would it still be aser? Rabbein Tam therefore learns that it's talking about the entire first pile then fell into a second pile. And all we're not talking about sfek sveika, we're talking about two roivs. The first time it fell in, it was 50 to 1, and the second time it fell in, it was 200 to that. So therefore, it's like two roivs. And you would think it's mutter, but Meir says it's aser. It's not a sfek sveika. The Chachamim say that Yalu ba'achas Musayim, if there's a total of 200. By Klai Keren, you need 200. By Orla is 100. By Klai Keren, you need 200. If there's 200, multiple of 200 of heter against the Isser, then all you do is Yalu, you take one out, the equivalent of whatever was original Isser, and you toss it away symbolically, and the rest becomes mutter. And so by Klaim and Orla, it's 201. By Truma, it's 100. Shemei says, and why is it so? Why don't we apply the rules of bittul over here? Meir says, "Es shedar kalim is mekadosh." Meir holds that even if occasionally you sell it by the number, it's already choshev. It does not become bottle. And Chacham say, "Einu mekadesh." No, you know when we say that it does not become bottle only if it's chashiv, only shishit v'rabavad, only 6 things that we can tally. And Rabbi Akiva says shiva the 7. Ve'elohein. For example, a goize perich, right? You have the walnuts from Perich. The walnuts from Perich are from the city of Perich are very chashiv. Or rimayne bodin, the pomegranates of bodin, they're chashiv. Or chavius tumas, the sealed barrels, they're chashiv, so they don't come bottle. Or chalfe trodin, or the leaves of beetroots, or kilche kruv, or the leaves of cabbage, and Rashi said, we're talking about the cabbage and the straw that was very, very large, or the last yivanis, or a Greek melon. So so these are all chashiva things, but otherwise, stam everything is bottled. Kiva adds moisiv af kikra shabalabais, loaves of bread from balabas. They're chashiv, and therefore harola orla. Let's say if this is the case of orla, that orla, whatever the laws by orla are, and these things which are chashiv, if they're mixed in these others, they all now become also like orla, harola, klaiket, and klaiket. You know, and you know, not everything is shayt to whatever the laws of orla apply. That's orla or klaiket. Rabbi Yechon says, what does that man mean when he said those words? If it's chasav eshed dar kalimus, we have an argument. Rabbi Yechon Shlakish in the pshat of Rameir's words. Rabbi Yechon says eshed dar kalimus sheninu. As long as occasionally the counted is already chash. And if you're lucky, I'm a kosher dar kalimus sheninu. You're lucky says no. Only if it's the only way you sell it is by counting it. Now, is honichel shemulakish? What shemulakish is sorry. If shemulakish says kosher dar kalimus, if occasionally you sell it, it's already chashuv. Rabbi Yechon says eshed dar kalimus, only if the only way you sell it is by counting it. So according to the shemulakish, that says if you occasionally sell it, it's chashuv. So eggs also you occasionally sell by the number in those days. So therefore it is chashuv, and therefore it's not bottle. And therefore we understand we're talking about here. What do you call it? A suffix treifa. And why isn't it bottled to fell into 1,000 eggs? Because occasionally you sell it by the number. So it's a double of a minion and it's chashiv. Rabbi Yechon, what's he going to answer? He holds that the only time it's chashiv is the only way you sell it is by counting eggs. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So according to Rabbi Yechon, it should be bottled. If we're talking about a suffix treifa, it should be bottled. Amar Papa says, no, high Tana, the Tana of that Brisa is a different Tana. No, even Rabbi Yechon personally holds that Dovah B'Sheminin is only if the only way you sell it by counting it. But the Tana of the Brisa is another Tana who holds personally that even if occasionally you sell it, is already enough to make a chashiv. So Rabbi Yechon says that Tana, what can I do? I can't argue the Tana. High Tana, that Tana is the Tana of the leader of Ktiyas, and what's the story of the leader of Ktiyas? He says as follows: we're talking about dried figs of truma. And what's the story about dried figs of truma? Somebody says, "Kol dover shemin." He holds anything that you count. Afilu b'derabbanan bottle, even if it's midrabbanan, it is not bottle. And the chosh came the rice. Surely, if it's a suffix treifa, it will not become bottle if you count it sometimes, not even occasionally, just sometimes. What's the story? That now we learned. So you have there these dried figs, and they used to press them together with a certain instrument called a kli ugel, and they all get pressed together, and it's called the gule devela, the round circle of devela of dried figs. But when you sell it, you take a fork and you separate the figs from each other, and you sell it generally by the weight. So we learned a litra k'tziyas shedorsa alpi igul, that you put it on this keli called an eagle. That's how you make these things. But and one of them you didn't give truma from, and then you got mixed up with a whole bunch of other dried figs that you did give truma from, but you don't know which one is which. But any day, basically eagle dorsa, you don't know which one it is. You don't know where it's sitting, and so therefore. So no, we know for sure he didn't put it inside the vessel, but on top of the vessel was this round thing that sort of helped put it like in a cake form, in a circle. It definitely was not inside the barrel. So everything inside the barrel is not a part of the suffix. The suffix is only on top of one of these eagles, and you don't know which one. Or alpi chavos, you place it on top of a barrel, then you did a chavos does. You don't know on top of which barrel you did the work. So inside the barrel is not part of the suffix. You know for sure it wasn't inside the barrel; it was on top. You just don't know which one it is. So what do? Or pick kaveres around the cylinder, any day basic kaveres. You just don't know which one it is. Again, which one? What should you do? Is Ameya said it's an argument Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua, and this is how I understand their argument. Ameya said Rabbi Lezer says we separate the top of the barrel or the oil. We separate it from the rest of the fruits inside. right? So you have a top of the eagle, but not what's inside. The top of the barrel, that's what's inside. But he said, what we do is we're going to be lenient, and we are going to include in the laws of bittul, by Truma you need 100 to 1. We're going to include the contents that's inside the barrel. We're going to assume as if whatever's on top of the barrel is, on the one hand, is separated from it. We say that it's separated. Sorry, it's all the way around. He says we see the top ones as if it's pruda separated from the top of the barrel. We imagine that whatever's on top of the barrel is actually sitting inside the barrel, and therefore we can use the aggregate of all the tvua that's inside, all the dates that's inside all the figs that are inside the barrel, and therefore if you have 100 to 1, it's all right, and if you don't, it all becomes us. And therefore you can combine everything that's inside the barrel and to work out your calculation of 100 to 1. And so why? Because this whole truma of Paris, remember the truma here of figs is only midrabanan, only the grains are mahatayda. Figs are only midrabanan, fruits are midrabanan. So we're going to be lenient, because what we're doing now is being very lenient, because if you include the contents inside the barrel, you should definitely have a multiple of 100 to 1. So that's what he said. However, Rabbi Yeshua says, he said, no. We will not look at all inside the barrel. We just look what's on top of the lid of the barrel. If you have 100 other barrels that are definitely you've given truma from, there's only one barrel you didn't, you don't know which one it is, then yalu. Then we're going to say we're going to apply the rules of bittul. So what you do is you take one out, throw it away, and that's it. However, but if not, all the tops are forbidden, but shalayim mutarim, whatever is inside the barrels are mutar, because we're going to keep the two totally separate. Whatever's above the barrel is above the barrel, whatever's inside the barrel is inside the barrel. So Rabbi Yeshua, in a way, he's being machmir. That's Rab Meir's version of their argument. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda says, no. Rabbi Lezer says what you just said, Rabbi Yeshua said, I hold is what Rabbi Lezer says. Rabbi Lezer says, there's 100 tops, then it's good. They nullifies it. We don't connect the inside to the outside, then the inside remains mutter, the outside will remain us. But Rabbi Yeshua says, Afilu yesham sholosh me'ez pumin layalu. Rabbi Yeshua says, even if you have 300 barrels tops, we will not cancel the one that you don't know about. So, for example, because he said they're all included in the suffix, and they will not permit any one of them. Why not? Because this is a davar shebeminyan. Because you sell barrels individually, you count them, and a davar shebeminyan is not bottled, even though the whole is only b'derabbanan. But if what about darsa be'eagle? If you die this in an eagle, in that circular thing that forms the pressed figs, you don't know which one. Everyone holds that will apply the laws of bittul. Ask the Gemara, everyone. We just said we just had that. This is the argument of Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Lezer. Everyone agrees that it's all right. You just said Rabbi Yeshua holds that even 300 barrels doesn't cancel it. Why? By eagle does. Does the eagle, let's say, was inside the eagle. So therefore, now that it's inside the eagle, not on top of the eagle, inside the eagle, so it's all stuck together now, and you can't tell what's what. And what don't you know? The A's and Mokri Dos, and that was inside this eagle was a bunch of other figs, and you threw in some of these figs that you didn't give truma in. So now if you look at it, you have no idea. They're all together, and you don't know which one is the one you gave truma from and which one's the one that you didn't. And you don't know whether it's final. You can't remember if you position it on the north side and the south side. Then Divrei Hakel Yolo. Since now there's no longer, it's not talking about a whole bunch of eagles. One particular eagle you threw it in. So there was no longer a davar shebeminyan, and everyone agrees that we've applied the rules. So it's not nikah, it's not choshev. They apply the rules of bittul. Everyone holds. So therefore, our Tana before holds like Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yeshua. That even though it's only sometimes, not even occasionally, only sometimes you count it, and yet he counts these pressed figs as a davar shebeminyan, and a fill ba'elef loy. So the Mishnah before that said that if an egg got mixed up with 1,000 eggs, and so on and so forth. The author of that brayso, is the same author over here that says that it's that davar shebeminyan, even if you don't always count it, even if you don't usually count it, but just even on occasion you count it, sometimes you count it, and that's good enough to make it choshev. It's not bot. And we'll just two more lines. Rabbi Asher says, I'll go back to our original answer. We're not talking about treif, we're talking about suffix, yomtiv, suffix, chol. So your question was, it's only Safek Rabbanon, why are so machmir? I'll tell you why. After we introduced the concept of Davish Yeshla Matirin, the eggs as well. Safek today is Yom Tov, but you can wait till tomorrow, won't be Safek anymore. And the whole Davish Yeshla Matirin, anything which can be mutter tomorrow, Vadai, Afilu b'Darabanan, the whole list of the Rabbanan, plus it's not even Rabbanan, it's a Safek Rabbanan. We're not going to rely on the Safek. We'll say, you know what? Why don't you wait till tomorrow and lay bottle? And therefore, that's the chumrah of Davish Matirin. That even by a Safek, might as well wait till a Safek Rabbanan, still wait till tomorrow, and instead of relying on the laws of Bittul and Safek and all that. Okay.